Hello students, welcome to this lesson. The objective of this unit is for you to understand the structure of the grammar and listening sections. This lesson has been divided in 3 parts. We will be looking at the structure, question types, and general skills. So let's begin with the lesson. And what I want to do first is to take a look at the objectives of the lesson or of the unit in a little bit more detail. So at the end of this unit, you will learn the following. What is the structure of the grammar and listening sections? What question types are there? What is the time for each question? Okay, now let's take a look at the structure and time for each section. And let's begin with grammar. The grammar section is divided in 2 parts. In part 1, you are asked to write a short note geared at the lower intermediate level on a given topic in response to instructions. This takes 5 minutes. In part 2, you are presented with a brief, upper-level written topic and are asked to express and support your opinion on the topic. This takes 20 minutes, so you have 25 minutes in total. Now, the listening section is divided in 3 parts and takes 20 minutes. In part 1, you have 4 high beginning to low intermediate level conversations of 2 to 3 sentences, each followed by 1 multiple choice question. In part 2, you will find 1 2 to 3 minute intermediate level conversation followed by 4 multiple choice questions. And in part 3, 1 4-minute upper level lecture followed by 6 multiple choice questions. Now, let's begin with the grammar section. And I would like to begin by saying that review of grammar rules and conventions will also be a helpful preparation for the writing section. You can improve your skills outside of class by reading as much standard English as possible. This will help you develop an ear for good grammar, which will be useful in the future. Okay, so let's begin with this grammar general overview. And there are 25 questions in the grammar section, each of which asks you to correctly use a key feature of English grammar. This section includes a range of features from simple to more difficult. There are 2 types of questions, and each is explained with an on-screen example. Type 1 questions 1 to 13 ask you to choose the correct word or phrase to complete the sentence. Type 2 questions 14 to 25 ask you to choose the incorrect word or phrase in the sentence. Okay, so first, let's go to grammar part 1. What will you find in grammar part 1? You will find 13 multiple choice and fill in the blank questions. Now, here we have an example that shows you how to complete questions 1 to 13. It says to select the word or phrase that correctly completes the sentence. And here we have an example. We have a sentence that says, he was worried blank his friend's recent behavior. And we have 4 options. A, about, B, from, C, that, and D, toward. Now, how will you go about choosing the correct answer? First, you will use the process of elimination. You will eliminate the options that you are sure are incorrect. And then you will put each word into the sentence and read it. And you will choose the one that sounds right. And the correct answer is A. He was worried about his friend's recent behavior. And this is the way it appears on the actual exam. This is the screen. And it says for questions 1 to 13, select the word or phrase that correctly completes the sentence. And the example says the students are going to visit a museum tomorrow. So you use process of elimination, you put each one into the sentence, and you decided that are going sounds right. And that is your answer. Let's go to grammar part 2. In grammar part 2, you will find 12 error identification multiple choice questions. Okay? And you will be shown one example before each of the 2 different question types. You have 10 minutes to review the examples and answer the 25 questions. Okay? Now, let's take a look at this part. The directions say, choose the word or phrase in the sentence that is not correct. Here we have to check what is not correct. And you have 10 minutes to review and answer the 25 questions. Now, the basic strategy here is to read the sentence and to try to hear the error. There is no need for you to know exactly what mistake has been made, for you have to only know that it sounds wrong. If an error is not immediately obvious, you should read each underlined part of the sentence and use the process of elimination, like in part 1, but here to see which one is not correct. And this is the way it appears on the actual exam. It says for questions 14 to 25, select the word or phrase that is not correct in the sentence. Click next to continue. And the example says he, and the first option is studying law at the university. Second option, in order. Third option, becoming an attorney. Now, which one sounds wrong? Becoming. And that is your answer. Okay? Now, let's take a look at some of the skills you need in order to perform well on grammar part 1. Number 1, read each answer choice back into the question. So you will put each one into the question, read it to see if it sounds right or wrong. Choose the one that sounds correct. Use process of elimination by crossing out the incorrect answers. And use vocabulary skill development. Okay? Let's go on to grammar, the skills that you need for grammar part 2. Number 1, the basic strategy here is to read the sentence and to try to hear the error. There is no need for you to know exactly what mistake has been made, for you only have to know that it sounds wrong. If an error is not immediately obvious, you should read each underlined part of the sentence and use the process of elimination. Okay, now let's take a look at some useful tips for the grammar section in general. It says, know the question types beforehand. Know the directions beforehand. And basically, that's what this lesson is for, this unit, for you to be familiarized with the types of questions and the directions before you take the test. And then review and practice basic English grammar. Now, it does not say study the rules, because you will not be evaluated on rules. It says to practice and review English grammar in context, the structures, how to use them, how to correctly structure sentences, and so on. So this will be very helpful. Okay, now let's take a look at the listening section. Okay, and what will you find in the listening section? Okay, as you can see here, the listening section is divided in 3 parts. And what will you find in part 1? You will find 4 short conversations, each followed by 1 multiple choice question. In part 2, you will find 1 longer conversation, followed by 4 multiple choice questions. And in part 3, you will find 1 longer lecture, followed by 6 multiple choice questions. This section is 20 minutes long and requires the use of the listening CD or online audio. The listening section is designed to determine how well you are able to understand what may be heard in typical high school, iTEP slate, college, iTEP academic, or business, iTEP business environments. The questions target listening comprehension. No previous knowledge of the topic is required. All questions can be answered by using basic listening skills and understanding the information in the selection. So this is important. You do not need previous knowledge about the topics. All you need to do is listen attentively, and use listening comprehension, strategies. Okay? Now, listening is one of the most important skills you can have. How well you listen has a major impact on your job effectiveness and on the quality of your relationships with others. And a way to improve your listening skills is by using active listening. You should use active listening to listen closely and carefully. That is what active listening is, listening closely and carefully. You should create a mental picture of the conversation that includes the following. First, the situation or place where the conversation occurs. Who the speakers are. How the speakers are related. What topic, problem, or question is being discussed. What each speaker believes, feels, and wants. What answer, solution, or conclusion is proposed. How the speakers feel about the problem and solution. Whether the speakers agree or disagree about the conclusion. And finally, what action or actions are likely to be taken next. Now, active listening is similar to active reading, and it involves the following. Guessing what will come next, asking questions, making educated guesses. This means don't guess just because you're guessing. Guess based on the information you receive. Creating a mental picture, paying attention to tone of voice, inflection, pauses, and taking notes, especially in parts 2 and 3. Now, let's go to listening part 1. And what can you expect to find in listening part 1? In this section, you will hear 4 short conversations, each followed by 1 question. The examinee will have a total of 80 seconds to answer the 4 questions. So remember, you have 80 seconds to answer the 4 questions. These short conversations will assess your ability to understand the speaker's meaning. There will be 2 speakers, typically a man and a woman. Because these conversations are so short, there is probably no need to take notes, but you may do so if it is helpful. So if you consider that you need to take notes, you just go ahead and take those notes. Now, these are some of the skills you need to perform well on this part of the listening section. So, while listening, imagine the scene, and if desired, take notes. But it's important to imagine the scene. And what do you need to ask yourself? Who are the speakers? What is the question or problem? What is the solution? What will probably happen next? It is also important to pay attention to tone of voice, because this also tells us a lot about what's going on and helps you to imagine the scene. And pay attention to transition words. Okay, let's go to listening part 2. And what will you find in listening part 2? In listening part 2, prepare to listen to one longer conversation followed by 4 questions. You will hear each question once and read it on the screen. You may take notes to use in answering the questions. Now, here we have the skills that you need in order to perform well on listening part 2. Now, it says the examinee should be taking notes while listening to the script. And these notes what should they do? They should identify situation and speakers. They must summarize main points, details, logical organization, function, purpose, and guess meaning or attitude from tone of voice. Again, here the tone of voice is important. And here are some sample notes for a response. I'm going to leave this screen on for a few seconds so you can read those sample notes. Okay, let's go to listening part 3. And what can you expect to find in listening part 3? Prepare to listen to a lecture followed by 6 questions. You will have 3 minutes to answer the questions. You will hear the lecture only once, and it will not appear on the screen. You may take notes while listening to help prepare a response to the questions. So basically, this is a question about what you've heard, and you're going to answer according to what you've understood. Okay? All right. Now, to conclude, let's see some important aspects to remember about the listening section. You can improve your skills outside of class by reading as much standard English as possible. This will help you develop an ear for good grammar, which will be useful in the future. Listening is one of the most important skills you can have. How well you listen has a major impact on your job effectiveness and on the quality of your relationships with others. And finally, but very important, use active listening to listen closely and carefully. Okay, thank you very much for your presence. I hope all this information is useful, and see you next time. by.